Today's podcast is brought to you by Visa. With the capacity to process over 65,000 transaction messages every second, Visa has been bringing innovations to the way we pay for over 60 years. Imagine a world where, instead of just tapping to pay with Visa, you had to wait for everyone in front of you to cut a check. Everywhere you went. Imagine how much fun it'd be trying to track down your cousin in Milwaukee for league dues. That's why Visa's vision is to be the best way to pay and be paid everywhere, so you won't have to. Whatever your goals are, Visa makes paying fast and easy. The only thing left to figure out is, where would you like to be? Visa, everywhere you want to be.
Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Kustok filling in for Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That's Nick Wright. I would say happy Friday and ask how you guys are doing,
but I'm gonna knock that out your hands.
I think we already know the answer.
Yeah. So
it was a tough one last night.
It was a tough one.
You may want your Yankees.
Oh yeah, let me throw you some damn tissues for your Yankees down 3-1.
I will cry, but not over the Yankees. But back to you. Get yourself a tissue.
We'll keep these on the table for now because we got a big show coming up. The Cowboys and Eagles face off in an epic NFC East battle. Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones go head-to-head as we get a glimpse of the future of the NFL. But we start with a huge blow for both the Chiefs and the league as a whole. Chiefs and Broncos Thursday Night Football last night. And the news of the night happened on this play. 4th and 1, Chiefs call for a quarterback sneak with their already hobbled MVP quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes injured on the play, reportedly suffering a dislocated kneecap. Now, Kansas City has an MRI scheduled today to determine potential ligament damage. Mahomes was able to walk off on his own power while his team did pick up the 30-6 win over Denver. They lost their star, though, in the process. And after the game, Mahomes tweeted, "Awesome team win. Love my brothers. Thank you for all the prayers. Everything looking good so far." Here's head coach Andy Reid on his quarterback.
Just as far as the injuries go, the main one is, and the only one, it was Patrick. And we'll wait till we get back to give you further evaluation on it. He's in a good place. I mean, he was in a good place on the field when it happened. Grimace, our doc, was phenomenal and just calming everything down. Dr. Schruppel, he just kind of calmed the storm right there, and Pat was good. Felt very comfortable with him. He refused to get in that cart. Not too many people get hurt on a sneak, and so it's a freak thing, and it happens. So,
all right, Steve, what's your reaction to Mahomes' injury?
I mean, I don't have a negative reaction. It's the NFL. I mean, we have a number of quarterbacks that are already out. I mean, some of our best quarterbacks that ever played the game. So to think that a guy can get hurt playing in the game and I'd be surprised, no. This happens in Deshaun Watson. He gets hurt in practice 2 seasons ago. So this is part of the NFL. Andy Reid did say it was a freak thing. Yes, I will say that. But it's all part of development. Like, we watch these guys play, and if you look at Patty Mahomes, if you look at Baker Mayfield, and Coach Mangini always says it, Nick's trying to put guys in the Hall of Fame. But that's what we do. Like, we think these guys are great, and they're going to have 10, 15 years of sustained success, and we don't know that. This is just one bump in the road, in the journey of being a pro athlete. Like, I'm glad it's not his shoulder. I'm glad it's not, I'm glad he didn't dislocate his knee. Like, this could be a lot worse. So, to me, I don't think this is the type of injury that really altered the career of other really, really talented young players, and that being RG3 or Dante Culpepper. Dante Culpepper shattered his knee, altered his career. He was never the same again. RG3 was never the same again psychologically, or was he the same athlete? But Patty Mahomes has a higher football IQ, has more arm talent than those guys. I don't believe this will alter his career, but he will, just like the other great quarterbacks that we've seen, he will have to make adjustments to the game. Dan Marino, he hurt his knee at Pittsburgh. Now, modern day medicine is a lot better, but Dan Marino went on to have a number of surgeries on those knees that he couldn't be the athlete that he was. So he learned how to play in the pocket. John Elway, he hurt his knee in high school and then went on on to have a bunch of knee problems, but they learned how to play ultimately in the pocket. Patty Mahomes is ultimately going to have to play in the pocket. I don't believe this is going to affect him. If this was Lamar in Baltimore, I would have a little more concern because I don't think he's ready to do that full time. I know Patty Mahomes can play in the pocket full time, Nick.
This is depending on the prognosis in the MRI today, depending on whether he's out a month or the rest of the season, this is just different levels of devastating for not just Chiefs fans, but if you're a football fan. This is not the Kansas City and Nick Wright saying this. He is one of the 3 or 4 most exciting players to watch in the entire league. He is a guy that you set appointments to watch because he does things that almost no other player in the league can do. And while Coach Mangini can give me a hard time all he wants for putting guys in the Hall of Fame, I don't think it is hyperbole at all to say what we saw from Patrick Mahomes in the only full season we'd ever seen from him was the greatest introductory season any quarterback has ever had. Now, because the game is so brutal, because you have a near 100% injury rate, you can't ever put guys in the Hall of Fame. RG3's rookie year was sensational.
Yep.
And then he was never anywhere close to that. Now, this doesn't appear to be that type of injury, but it is so disappointing because you mentioned Deshaun Watson. This did remind me of a couple years ago where in a very short period of time, we lost Aaron Rodgers for the bulk of the season with the collarbone injury. Deshaun Watson was having just a sensational first month of his career. We lose him in practice with a torn ACL, and it just makes the league less fun to watch. Now, for Mahomes, you are happy. What Andy Reid said is important. The 2 points. One is his the kneecap, they relocated it, if you will. I don't know the medical term for it, right there on the field. So it was dislocated for the shortest period of time possible. And he refused the cart. And you could even see his gait by the time he got close to the end zone was already improved. The question will be, was there ligament damage? If there was, they will have to do surgery. If there wasn't, there will be a question about whether they're going to do surgery now or wait till the end of the season.
Yeah, anytime you have a knee injury in the NFL, don't get consumed with the walk-off.
Of course.
Because almost all the guys that I've seen shatter their knee, I'm talking about, I have shaken hands with guys. Man, are you all right? Yeah. Feels a little tight. All right. But I feel like I'm okay. And then you get that MRI. Yep. What happens? ACL torn. MCL torn. So we've seen a lot of people walk, and that walk is deceptive. It's deceiving. It will fool a lot of people. But Patty Mahomes refused to get on that cart, which we've seen a lot of NFL players do. I believe he'll be back. I believe he'll be back within a month. I believe he'll probably miss 3 or 4 games. There's other players that have had this type of injury. So I don't think it will affect just their arc of their season. But for me, as long as I've been watching the game, every season I expect great players to get hurt. Because this is not a contact sport. It is a collision sport. And there's only 2 groups that really aren't ready for those collisions. And that's the kickers and the quarterbacks. The rest of them are full-time football players, so I do expect them to be hurt year in and year out.
One quick follow-up before we get to the QB sneak part of it. The point Cris keeps making, which is causes the most apprehension for, I think, football fans and Chiefs fans, is does this change when Patrick Mahomes comes back, whether it be in a month or the beginning of next season, the type of football player that he is? Because while I said last week when we were talking about the ankle injury, that he can, in the pocket, he's one of the best quarterbacks in football, but what has made him the league MVP is what he does in the pocket and what he does outside of the pocket. How much is that affected long-term from this moment?
And you bring it up. We had been talking about Patrick Mahomes, the ankle injury he's been dealing with the last few weeks.
Yes.
Andy Reid calls this a freak accident. But what was going through your mind? Did you make of the fact that Chiefs 4th and 1 that Reid calls a quarterback?
Yeah, there's freak accidents. There's freak accidents when you're riding in your car, too. But do you have on your seatbelt? Because that's going to prevent you from a lot of things. Patrick Mahomes got hurt in week number 1. He re-aggravated in week number 5 and at least week number 6. In those situations, I need someone else on that roster to go get me 6 or 8 inches. Andy Reid, with all his creativity, yes, I do know that the quarterback sneak is the most effective way to get 1 yard. But we go through periods of time where if the center had a bad back, would we run a quarterback sneak or would we run a toss or something? We would do something different. and you do the same thing for your quarterback. A lot of times in pro sports, sir, you know this, you have to take that decision away from the athlete. If Patty Mahomes comes over to the side and said, Andy, it's the 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, what should we run? He said, let's run a quarterback sneak. You got it. He'd be like, yeah, coach, I got it. I'm going to go for it. No, you have to remove that from them for a number of reasons. You can't predict what's going to happen. And as much as these quarterbacks think they're football players, they're not. They're not used to getting hit. You can't predict who's going to hit him, what's going to happen to him in the pile, and it is the least practiced play in football. Anybody say they go to a practice and they doing live quarterback sneaks, they are not telling you the truth. Ask Andy Reid, when was the last time Patty Mahomes did a live quarterback sneak? Coach?
Outside of the game. Right, in practice. It's not something, because the reason you don't practice it, tell me if you disagree, is because if you're going to practice it live, there are so many bodies all falling in the same direction, a freak thing can happen. Now, Cris is right. The numbers are, this is the most effective play in football. 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, if you got to have it, the absolute right play is this play. My problem is, this is the 2nd quarter of a game you're leading in November with your injured franchise quarterback. You don't got to have it.
No.
And if this was 4th and 1 with Patrick Mahomes on a gimpy ankle in the AFC Championship game, gut up and go get it. And if this happens...
Right. It's no different than doing an injury report during the week. If you got wide receivers, I'm not going to throw the ball 50 times if they're banged up.
Yeah.
Like, you have to use wisdom and be smart in these situations. So for me, for the first 10 weeks of the season, he would have been out of quarterback sneaking. And then once he started getting healthier, and if I got into we got to have it situation, then I would go to it. But that was not the situation. And you have to be able to protect athletes from themselves, because we will run into a brick wall. If it's to get a win, if it's to get a catch, if it's to get a reception, if it's to get a tackle, we will do that. And Patty Mahomes was doing just what the coach. So Andy Reid knows today, because now looking back at it, he can say whatever he wants to. It's a freak injury, but it happened to your guy.
And it's, Cris, it's an indicative of everything matters. And I say that in this regard. This wasn't about Patrick Mahomes' ankle injury that he came into the game with. This was about the Chiefs' lack of a power running game. This was about cutting Kareem Hunt last year and no longer having him. This was about an offensive line that has not been a big, physical, powerful offensive line. That's why they didn't pick up the 3rd and 1 that led to this, or 3rd and 1.5. And that's why in this spot you're like, well, can we rely on our running back to go get a yard? I'm not sure. And you put your franchise quarterback, league MVP, 24-year-old superstar in jeopardy. Yes, that is a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking as far as would we be critiquing it if he didn't get hurt? No, it would just be another play. But with the knowing what happened, it does feel very preventable.
All right, we got to take a break, but we've got much more on this as the show continues. Cowboys hosting the Eagles in a pivotal NFC East showdown on Sunday Night Football. Dallas has lost 3 straight, and part of the main reason can certainly be traced back to their 0 first-half touchdowns during the losing streak. Here's Dak Prescott on his team's slow starts.
When you're playing from behind, you're obviously not running the ball that much, so it's hard to get the same leverage, or get the same response you get when you do a play action when you're down a couple of touchdowns. So we'll get back to it. We'll get back to running our offense, but I think it all goes back into starting faster than we have, dictating the tempo, and allowing us to do exactly that.
Starting fast is one thing, but see, what do Dak and the Cowboys offense need to do to come out with a win Sunday against the Eagles?
Well, first of all, before I get to what they're going to do, Dak Prescott was the second person I thought about when Patrick Mahomes got hurt last night. First was Nick Wright. And now Dak Prescott. As far as this money, Jerry slid this contract over to him. Dak keeps sliding it back, saying, add something to it, boss. When you watch Patrick Mahomes injure his knee and how significant it might be, it affects other players. And I believe that Dak watching that game, it affected him. So how Dak and Zeke and this offense, how they're going to operate and beat Philadelphia, yesterday I said, man, they have to be creative. They have to run it, and they have to have Dak involved in the running game. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs the ball 8 to 10 times. I bring back the RPOs, the run-pass option for the quarterback, out of the shotgun, letting him read the defense. Zeke's going to carry a bunch of those. I'm going to run a few of them, and then several times I'm going to throw the ball out of it. I still believe that's the most effective way for Dallas when your wide receiving core is banged up, I don't know how healthy Cobb's going to be. Don't know if Amari Cooper, he hasn't shown me the ability that he can be one of the elite receivers when he's a little bit nicked up. So they were depleted at the end of the game. That's why they went to Jason Witten. So my philosophy is we have to run the ball. We have to be creative because we don't have a starting left tackle. We don't have our starting right tackle. But now with what happened last night, Dak's human now. And that contract's still sitting on the table. And all that guaranteed money that he's never had participated in, I believe that weighs on his mind. So will he be as willing on those RPOs? The defensive end is right in between, Sarah. Do I just give it to Zeke? Go ahead, Zeke, you run it.
Power through it.
Or do I play with reckless abandon that he did in college and his first 3 years in the league, Nick?
All right, so you and I have been spending too much time together because I thought of Dak as well, but for a slightly different reason. I also thought of you because you called me. Now I gave you the bleep you button. I couldn't deal with you at that moment.
Pick up,
no, I couldn't pick up his call. Patrick Mahomes is limping off the field. My phone rings. I see Cris Carter. I say, not today, Satan. Not dealing with it. But I thought of Dak in this regard, and then I'll answer the question, so I don't want to defer it. But when you talk about him wanting to accept Jerry's deal, I thought of him going to Jerry and saying, listen, you guys might think I'm not the throw of the football Patrick Mahomes is, not the throw of the football Carson Wentz is. You know what I am? Always available. You got a league where half the teams are on their second quarterback already. 14 teams are on their second quarterback, either due to injury or incompetence. Dak Prescott can say, man, one thing you can put me in the same category of Russell Wilson, the highest paid player in the NFL, is I am always here. So I do think that while I agree with you logically, you'd see that and say, man, I got a bird in the hand, and that bird is $100 million guaranteed. Dak's been very audacious, if you will, on playing without that contract, and I don't know if that wraps up in the next 72 hours. Now, on the football game, Dak talked about starting fast. Man, this Cowboys offense in the first half, I'm not talking about just during the 3-game losing streak, dating back to the Miami game in week 3, so over the last 4 games, has been as bad as any first half offense in football outside of maybe Miami. The first 2 games of the year, the Cowboys had 9 drives in the first half. They scored 35 points on those 9 drives. That's, what's that, almost 4 points a drive, a touchdown every other drive. Since then, they've had 23 first-half drives. They've scored 19 points, including the Miami game. They have dug themselves in a huge hole the last few weeks against New Orleans. They were in it the whole game because New Orleans offense couldn't do anything. And then against the Jets and the Packers, they obviously were down multiple scores at the half and playing catch-up. It's one of the reasons why the Cowboys' yards per game numbers, which look really good to me, are wildly inflated. Because the last couple weeks, you've got teams not playing prevent, but playing soft coverage to try to prevent the big play over the top. The Cowboys got to get back to what they were doing the first couple games of the year and get off to a legitimate start. Put some of the pressure on Philadelphia. Try to take Philadelphia out of what they want to do and make it so they can lean on Zeke late in games, which has been their formula for winning over the last few years. So I do think Dak keyed on the important point. Can you get off to a better start? I think it's going to be incredibly difficult because of those injuries. Those tackle injuries, those receiver injuries. How much is it going to fall on Zeke, and how much is Philadelphia going to say, listen, if Tavon Austin's going to beat us, God bless, but we are not going to let Ezekiel Elliott beat us.
Big picture, will the winner of this game have a stranglehold on the NFC East?
No, absolutely not. It's going to be bundled up to the finish. It's going to be a week number 17. Neither one of these teams can plan on, something, man, week 15, we'll play hard that week. Week 16 and 17, we might be able to chill. Absolutely not. The cushion that they've had, they have already utilized that. So it's going to be knockdown, drag out. Neither one of them have a schedule that there's any type of relief in it. So no, we thought it would be a tight race, but we thought it would be a race to 11 and 12 victories or 11 and 10 victories for these two teams. We thought they were the best in the division. So no, I can't say that with this win, either one of these teams, not unless there was some significant injury to one of their quarterbacks or something like that. No, I believe Neither one of these teams is at an advantage unless Philadelphia wins on the road with the rematch coming back in Philadelphia. That would give them a huge advantage. But a stranglehold, I'm going to hold off just a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia, with a win, can put themselves in a far more powerful or advantageous position than Dallas can. One, because they are on the road and they know in Week 16 Dallas has to come back to their building. The other is the Cowboys have been operating as if last week was rock bottom. No, this would be. Like, you can think you're at rock bottom and then dig a little deeper. And if you really want to send some shockwaves through that organization, put some, plant some seeds of doubt in the players, is this going to work? Is Jason Garrett going to be our coach next season? They're going to be wholesale changes. Have that team lose 4 games in a row. Have that team get embarrassed at home by Green Bay.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the losses. You lose to New Orleans. They don't have Teddy Bridgewater. You can't score 13 points. You're down 31-3 to Green Bay in a game that people thought you'd be right there if not win. You lose to the Jets, a Jets team that had 2 offensive touchdowns on the year. If you then lose at home to the team that you have circled on your schedule all year long, to me, if Philly wins, they can't bury Dallas because Philly hasn't been good enough throughout the year to be able to say they're going to be able to bury anybody, but they can start shoveling some dirt on them.
What are the numbers for a team losing 4 in a row?
6, since the playoff format it is now, only 6% of teams that have ever gone through a 4-game losing streak have made the postseason. So that's the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, and that's 2 reasons for that. One is you usually only have about 6 losses to play with over the course of the year if you're going to make the playoffs. And the other reason is if you lose 4 in a row, you're usually not any good. And that's the concern for Dallas. That was your concern Monday. That is, maybe Dallas just isn't a good football team. They have a chance to prove they are this weekend. They got a tough battle at home.
How long can the Chiefs survive without Mahomes?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question because a lot of that depends on the question is, can they win their division? It's no longer can they get a bye. It's no longer you remove that from it. That's what was lost at a minimum last night. Question is, can you win your division, guarantee yourself a home playoff game, and be in the playoffs assuming Mahomes is back with a healthy Patrick Mahomes? And this is where the inexplicable and really indefensible struggles of Los Angeles Chargers. This is where Denver going with Joe Flacco. Those things play to their benefit. The Chargers were a 12-win team last year. Now, I know they lost Derwin James, and that made me skeptical of them a bit this year, but they have been disastrous. They just lost to a third-string duck-calling quarterback at home on national television. So the Chargers have almost crossed themselves out. Denver was feeling good about themselves. They had won 2 in a row. They had said, 2 of our losses came on last-second field goals, and then they get the gift of all gifts, Patrick Mahomes being knocked out of the game, and they can do nothing with it. That team, you can almost cross them out. So to me, the question is, can the Chiefs, if he misses a month, they have Green Bay, Minnesota, at Tennessee, and at the Chargers. Can they go 2-2? Can they beat the Titans and the Chargers? If they go 1-3, because they are right now already at 5-2, would they, even if they went 1-3, would they be in first place when Patrick Mahomes were to come back after the bye, if Cris is right about that he could only miss a month? I think the answer to that question is yes. I don't think Oakland is all of a sudden going to rip off 3 of 4. So I think they can tread water. I don't think they can have the success New Orleans has had without Drew Brees because they don't have Teddy Bridgewater back there. But I don't know if they need to have that level of success in order to stay in first place in the division.
There hadn't been a team since Matt Moore's been in the league that was confident when he was under center. So how long can you live without oxygen? They got no defense. They got no run game. Without Patty Mahomes, they got no hope. All right? Because the way the offense is constructed, where it's based on the wide receivers, their speed, and their overall creativity. Now, Travis Kelce, he'll catch 100 balls because he can get to a sweet spot. But they don't have the protection to allow the deep routes to develop down the field, and Matt Moore does not have the arm talent. Do you know where he was when he was getting ready to start the season?
Yeah, he was coaching or
He
scouting.
had given up on football.
That's true.
And he had signed with the Miami Dolphins as a scout. Now, they got a hell of a scouting department to hire him based on the way the team they're putting out there. But his mind was not in pro football. And I know Andy Reid. He's one of the best quarterback coaches in the world. Their offense is creative. But when Patty Mahomes hurt his knee last night, they opened up a different playbook. because you cannot run the different variety of routes that they want to run, and Patty being familiar with it and having the arm talent that I can get to all these spots on the field. So Andy Reid's going to have to do some of his best coaching to be able to keep this team alive and keep them in the race.
And so real quick to follow up, though I do wonder how many games do they need to win between now and the bye to stay alive, to stay in the race? Right now they've got 5 wins. The next most in their division is 3. So if they went 1-3, would they still, and then they have the bye, and then Oakland, by the way, the team that's most likely to be chasing them. Mm-hmm. If Patrick Mahomes is just out a month, assuming they don't go winless in the month, I think when he comes back, they would still at least have a share of the divisional lead. Because I agree, listen, the Chiefs defense played great last night. I don't think that is sustainable. I don't think that's duplicable. I don't think they all of a sudden unlock something. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to act like all of a sudden the Chiefs are some team that can do what New Orleans is doing, which is just pivoting to a defense run-oriented game plan. I just don't know how many games they would need to win in this month of football.
The thing about it, the goals for Kansas City have changed. After being the AFC Championship home field advantage, Patrick Mahomes MVP, the goal is not to get in the playoffs. They're not Dallas. They're not one of these teams. It's to win in the playoffs and advance. So for me, if they can't have home field advantage, I don't trust them playing at home. We saw what New England did to them last year, had controlling the ball for 40 minutes. I don't trust them at home. Now you think I trust them on the road with a bad defense and no running game in December and January? No, so that's what I talk about, running out of oxygen. Like, they need some help. They need the Kansas City. They need at least a game in Kansas City. They need a bye week. So for me,
I think the bye week's gone now. If that to you eliminates some of that, I think they still can get a game in Kansas
City. If you got a ticket for them to buy the Super Bowl, you might as well light that one up. Well, spark that one on.
I think we disagree on whether or not they can win a road playoff games. But if they win the division, they would have a home playoff game to start with. But they wouldn't have the bye week, and we know New England's going to get one. New England, what did you say, C, when they? I think it was when Antonio went there. What does the league do with New England?
Oh, everything. If I could lift this table up, the whole league,
just
31 teams,
New England,
right into Belichick's bosom.
I mean, it's unbelievable. The only team that's thrown a scare in the last 2 years.
Canty, what's your reaction to Mahomes' injury?
Well, my first thoughts were about Pat Mahomes and just concern for him as the player. I mean, even though you're competing out there, you never want to see a guy get injured. I mean, you want to go out there and inflict pain. You want to hit the quarterback as much as you can, but you never want to see a guy
have to
want him
to get up and take some more.
Exactly. You never want to see a guy hobble to the point where he has to be helped off the field. And it's a frightening sight for Chiefs fans, but for NFL fans, because Pat Mahomes is one of the most talented quarterbacks that we have in our league, and he's playing for one of the greatest offensive minds the game has ever seen in Andy Reid. So from an entertainment standpoint, I think it's a loss for all football fans. But in looking at this Chiefs team, I'm not as worried about things as long as Pat Mahomes' injury is not season-ending. If it's what we think it could be, which is no fracture, no ligament damage, then you're talking about him being gone for 4 to 6 weeks. And, of course, they have their bye week 5 weeks from now. So if for some way Matt Moore and this Kansas City Chiefs offense can do enough to give this team an opportunity to be competitive in the next few games, then I feel like you can rally after the bye week when you potentially get Pat Mahomes back, and this team can still have the opportunity to get into the postseason and compete for a championship.
Well, my reaction, once you get over the shock, is you hope, of course, that it's not season-ending. But whether it's season-ending or not, this obviously changes the trajectory of their season. It either ends their season, because if it's season-ending, Andy Reid, I think, is a great offensive play caller. They have really good wide receivers, but they're done if he's done for the year. If it's only a month, then I think they've given themselves a bit of a cushion in the division. I think they could tread water while he's not there, but the bye is gone. Home field advantage chances, if they existed with New England out to this great start, are gone. And it just does make you think about, man, how fleeting things can be in this league and how important it is to take advantage of every opportunity you have. This Chiefs team had home field advantage last year. This Chiefs team had a lead in the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship game. They forced overtime of the AFC Championship game and had 3 separate 3rd and 10s to get off the field, to get Patrick Mahomes back on the field, and to go to a Super Bowl against a Rams team that I think was ready to be had. And now, it's not that you got to restart the climb up the mountain. Now you're climbing a whole new mountain. Now it's a mountain that if they get into the playoffs, it's 3 playoff games they're going to have to play. Yep. 2 of which would be on the road, assuming they win the division.
And they're hoping for a good matchup.
Right, and there's so many different things change in the moment, and there are so many opportunities that you think well, we'll be right back here. That's what, and I don't want to put this out there because I don't want this to be the case, but it's what Dolphins fans and Dan Marino, I'm sure, thought. Year 2, league MVP, go to the Super Bowl, lose the Super Bowl. Well, we'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
They were never back. Now, I think the Chiefs are going to be back to AFC Championship games under Patrick Mahomes, but we'll see what the injury is, and we'll see the significance, and we'll see how long it is. And that is the nature of this game.
Yep, Randy Moss told me that.
In 98?
1998. Gary Anderson missed that field goal. Been perfect all season. Game goes into overtime. Atlanta Falcons, Morton Anderson beats us with a walk-off. They do the dirty birds on us. Moss, I'm crying in the locker room. Moss look at me. Oh, man, we'll be back. 2 years later, we got back to the NFC Championship, got 41 bageled by the Giants, but that team never came back. That team was unstoppable. We played 18 games, 2 games we didn't score 30 points, only 2 games we lost. So trying to think, oh, we getting ready to get back, oh, we getting ready to do this every single year, that's not what this league is about. You know, so for me, I didn't have any confidence in Kansas City representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Why? They don't have a running game, they won't manage the clock, and that defense is awful at all levels. The defensive line is not good as far as stopping the run. They don't turn you over, and they don't have good linebackers from a coverage standpoint. So now we're talking about what changed? The best thing they had going is change. So how would I gain confidence if Patty Mahomes is out for a month? Oh, they're going to develop a running game? Andy Reid? No, he's not. He's getting ready to throw the ball just like he always throws the ball. Spagnuolo in that defense, do I believe that he has the answer? I hadn't seen it. I'm not going to give him credit 4 quarters against Joe Flacco and that bad offensive line that they have. So I don't know how out of this I could gain any type of confidence being that, okay, say they win the division. Okay, you know who they might face? Whoever loses in the AFC South between Houston and the Colts. Both of them already beat Kansas City. You ready to face them?
In Arrowhead, by the way, which is where the game would be.
So there's no way you can look at this and gain confidence in Kansas City as a team.
No, you can't gain confidence, but this is an adverse circumstance. This is a challenge, and you're hoping that the team overall embraces it as an opportunity to figure out some other ways to try to win football games. Now, you looked at last night, what ended up happening, that defense being able to force some negative plays, being disruptive, 9 sacks, multiple fumbles. You're going to need a whole lot more of that. And so we have to factor in the Steve Spagnuolo and this being his first year as the defensive coordinator, putting in a new defensive system. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and now that we're past a little over the third of the season, maybe these guys are starting to pick up the scheme. Maybe they're starting to have a better feel for what he wants to do, how he calls a game. But looking at this, the defense is clearly going to have to be the part of the team that picks up the slack for Pat Mahomes. I just don't know if they're capable of doing it because we haven't seen them do it before in the past.
Right. I mean, last night was the most out of the norm game. Forget the Mahomes injury. From a defense perspective, he played in 2 years. It was the best defensive game they played in 2 years.
The problem when you don't have Patty Mahomes, you don't have variety in the offense. The offense is set up like a 4x1 track team. Now, all of a sudden, you can't say, hey, guys, you're not running 110 meters. You're running 400. You're running 800 meters. They don't have another tight end with Kelsey to be able to grind it out. Their fullback is not a great blocker, little musclehead. Like, he's not Devlin from New England. So for me, you guys are sitting here talking about stuff. Yes, hypothetically on paper, it all sounds good. But when you got a bunch of small, little speedsters, how are you going to change the offense? You can't. So for me, it's a matter of holding on until Patty Mahomes comes. And if Patty Mahomes is not there, they got zero life in Kansas City.
All right, Canty, starting fast is one thing, but what do Dak and this Dallas offense need to do to come out with a win over Philly on Sunday?
Well, they got to run the football, and I know we talk about that all the time with the Dallas Cowboys, but if you look at the Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott era of Dallas Cowboys football, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles 4 of the last 6 times they played them. And in those 2 losses that they have, that was the lowest rushing output of any of those games that the Cowboys have gone against the Eagles. So, of course,
real quick, those were the 2 games Zeke didn't play.
Exactly.
They're undefeated against Philly when Zeke plays.
When Zeke plays, exactly. So, I mean, and also the Tyron Smith injury, him coming back to practice, La'el Collins coming back to practice. They should be able to get that back on track. That would be the hope if you're Jason Garrett. But in taking a big picture look at this thing, the way that these two teams looked on Sunday, it has to be alarming for both coaches, but the way that the players reacted to each coach is completely different. When you saw the way that the players from the Dallas Cowboys reacted to Jason Garrett coming back to the sideline in that New York Jets game in the second half, he was going to shake hands with his players, and those guys were having no parts of it. And then you look at the other side of that coin with Doug Peterson. You heard what he said earlier this week with the quasi-guarantee saying we're going to go down to Dallas and we're going to get a win. I mean, between the two coaches, you would have to say that Doug Peterson has a better feel, a better pulse for his team. And the fact that he came out and said that, he knows what his team needs. They need to instill a little bit of confidence in that group. It just feels like the Philadelphia Eagles are a group that's going to bounce back more likely than the Dallas Cowboys. That's what I'm looking for in this game. Which team is going to come out and play with the energy early? We talk about the scoring output in the first quarter. Both of these offenses are at the bottom of the league in that, but it's more about the overall energy that you play with. You got to set the tone for division games, and I just feel like with where the Philadelphia Eagles are at right now, they have a better chance of doing that in this game than the Cowboys.
I'm going to tell you, bro, I watch a lot of stuff when watching video. And as football players, your eyes sometimes are captivated by a certain thing. You talking about that handshake and everything, that's something I miss. That's next level observant stuff. Those kind of things are real. Very few times people are able to point that out. Now that's something that I have to watch moving forward. For Dallas to be successful, Nick has the numbers as far as Ezekiel Elliott, when he plays, yards, all that. But what they have to do for the Dallas Cowboys, they have to avoid the situation they were in with the Jets. We know that there's wholesale changes on the offense, not only on the offensive line, they might be there, their wide receivers might be there. But at the end of the Jets game, they had a 2-point conversion to be able to tie this game up. They had Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. They motioned him out to the left. They have Jason Witten in a flex tight end spot, means he's going to be 3 to 5 yards from the tackle. They had Tavon Austin in the slot. Now, I'm going to tell you, that's the worst receiving core of anyone in the NFL as far as I got 3 options, and those are my 3 options. I got a 1,400-yard running back running a choice route in the slot. I got Jason Witten fresh out of retirement, out of the TV booth, and it wasn't because they was loving him on the TV. Tavon Austin has been everything but a wide receiver. So they're going to have to run the ball because you cannot depend on the skill set of those guys to get open on a regular basis. That Jets game and how they called that to try to convert to get that tie there, Kellen Moore, yes, he should be responsible because one thing they tell us in the league, know your personnel. And you cannot know your personnel and call that type of play.
Well, how about this? Also, know your opposition. Know that the defensive coordinator for the Jets is Greg Williams, and his got to have it play is I'm sending the heat.
Yeah, he's got money on it.
Right.
He's got a bounty on it.
Sure.
Yes.
And so there's 2 points here. One is I want people to understand the play you're talking about, the moment you're talking about, I should say. The Cowboys are trying to come back. The defense has just forced a stop. They are actually, the defense in the second half of the Jets game, you remember, held them to 3 points. Defense played well. And Jason Garrett is doing his traditional thing, clapping and walking onto the field, trying to shake hands. And 3 separate Cowboys. I didn't see it live, but I saw the clip on Twitter afterwards. Just walk right past.
And that's on purpose.
And it was like what the Lakers do to Josh Hart as a joke, or what they did last year, where nobody will give him 5s. But it was odd, especially because it's one thing if that was the offense. The offense has done nothing. They go 3 and out. You're trying to be positive, and the offense down on themselves. But the defense has just done its job. The defense should be, they're still in the game, at least a little fired up, and they still said, man, miss me with that, essentially. Now, to the Cowboys, what they need to do this week. The problem for the Dallas Cowboys last year, pre-Amari Cooper, post-Amari Cooper, good Dak, bad Dak, all year long, was the red zone. They were an abysmal red zone team, and they were one of the very worst in the league, I think bottom 2 inside the 10 and the worst inside the 5. Just as the field got shorter, their success got lower. That's the difference between the winning streak and the losing streak. In the winning streak, yeah, I know competition's different as well. They had 11 red zone drives. They scored touchdowns on 9 of them. To 82%. In the losing streak, they've had 9 red zone drives. They scored touchdowns on 4 of them. In the Jets game, they have a 1st and goal. They're inside the 5. They get stuffed on the 4th down play. A couple drives later, they have another 1st and goal. They're stuffed, and they end up kicking, I think, a 28-yard field goal. Similarly, the 2-point conversion. That's a red zone play.
Yes,
that is the definition of a red zone play. It doesn't show up in the stats, and you throw to Jason Witten. They have to convert 3s into 7, which they have struggled with mightily during this losing streak.
Canty, big picture, do you believe the winner of this game will have a stranglehold on the NFC East?
Well, whoever wins this game changes the conversation surrounding their season. Yes, I do believe that the NFC East will come down to these 2 teams, and so having the head-to-head tiebreaker is going to be significant, especially when we get to the last month of the season, because I do believe that it's going to be a closely contested division race. But ultimately, it's about being able to execute in the critical moments of the game. And to Nick's point about the situations that popped out for the Cowboys in that Jets game, I mean, if you look at what that Jets defense did to that Cowboys offense in those moments, it almost looked like they knew exactly what was coming. On the quarterback sweep in the first half, the Jets defense knew what was coming. Jamal Adams went as far as to say he knew on the 2-point play they were going to Jason Witten. So if you're a player on that Dallas Cowboys team and you hear the opposing team talking about the predictability of your offense, then that has to be frustrating, because as a player, all you want your coaching staff to do is give you the answers to the test. Tell me exactly what I need to do to go out here and have success on Sunday.
Right.
But when the other team has the same cheat sheet that you gave me, when the other team sees the tendencies and knows that you don't break them, that becomes a problem. And ultimately, that message from Jason Garrett has the potential to ring hollow if they don't have more success on the field.
And Jason Garrett has to overcome. He has more inexperience at the offensive coordinator and the quarterback spot. Several weeks ago, New Orleans said they stole the signals because he was doing the same signals, Kellen Moore, of what they were doing at Boise. And then now you're talking about the Jets. They knew exactly what they're going to do. So you got a lot of inexperience, and it's starting to click out. You can't play Miami every week. You can't play the Giants with a backup every week. Washington with problems every week. You got to play legitimate teams, and in that, Kellen Moore and this offense has struggled.
Right here in New York, fans will get a special treat on Sunday. #1 overall pick Kyler Murray will face Danny Dimes and the Giants. They are the 10th quarterback duo drafted in the top 10 to meet as rookies. So see, which rookie quarterback would you rather build your franchise around, Kyler Murray or Daniel Jones?
Ooh. Okay, now. Nick will tell you, my bio is pretty simple, Kustok. When it's any sport, the bigger I can be, the faster I can be, I'm about it. Size is important. The only one that said size wasn't important was a real small guy.
What do slow guys say?
Oh, yeah, speed is overrated. I'll be damned. Right. Don't tell me. I wish I had a little more speed.
Right.
But I would have to say in this, because of just overall arm talent, I believe both of them have big-time arms. I got to go with Kyler. And just because he has performed at a higher level in high school and in college. And in college, he showed me that he could go through some adversity. He had to make the decision in trying to manage, do I play baseball, transferring to another school, sitting behind a quarterback who's good, but Kyler believed he was better than Baker. So imagine now him sitting there that whole year, not being able to say anything, and the numbers he put up, he was actually a better quarterback, better numbers than Baker Mayfield. So for me, Tyler, Texas, I think he's from Tyler, Texas, one of the winningest high school players we've ever had in the state of Texas, maybe the best high school player in Texas.
Yeah, ever. Texas history.
To me, that over the long haul, even though he's a smaller guy, I would have to say Kyler. I'm going with Kyler because I believe that their football minds are relatively the same. I've seen some things with Kyler earlier in the year that make him, he's a little more tougher than I thought he would be. So I'm going to go with Kyler because I just believe he has more overall talent than Danny Dimes.
And just real quick on the high school and college stuff for Kyler. I was living in Texas when Kyler was a high school player there. It was like Paul Bunyan stories. It was, I mean, the way, and by the way, Texas high school football fans are not easily impressed now. Nope. I mean, they're used to same high school, I think, at Andy Dalton and Drew Brees, and then you're used to having.
Not in the history of the school, not in the history of a class.
No.
He might be the best high school player in the state of Texas football history.
Which is that, and then what he did at Oklahoma is the only reason a guy his height has any chance of being in this discussion. Because you guys know I didn't want to be, but I was skeptical of Kyler coming into the league because I'm skeptical of anyone trying to be the first person to ever do something. One day someone's going to be like, I'm going to walk on Mars, and I'm going to doubt them until we see them do it because no one's ever done it. Mm-hmm. That's what Kyler's trying to do. I'd still far rather have him than Daniel Jones because we can only evaluate guys based on what they've done. And Cris mentioned in high school and college been better, and in the pros he's been better.
I thought you would go to the pros. That's why
and
20
Kyler, by the way,
every game.
And Kyler, by the way, is getting better. Kyler it's not every week gets better, but his arrow is pointing up to a degree. Daniel Jones' first game that he started, his quarterback rating was 112. The second game was 78. Third game was 65, and this last game it was 35. His interceptions, he went from 2 touchdowns, 0 picks in his first game to 3 touchdowns, 6 picks in his most recent game. He's got a fumbling issue. Now, I understand that the Giants have been as bereft of talent as any team in the league since he's taken over. Saquon has never played a full game with him. Mm-hmm. They've had wide receiver injuries. And I am at least slightly more optimistic on Daniel Jones now than I was when he was drafted because I didn't know if he would ever have a game like he had that first game against Tampa. So he has shown me.
And he's got a big-time arm.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He has shown me he can make some throws.
Yes.
But even though he's, 9 inches taller, 8 inches taller than Kyler, I think Kyler's overall talent, athleticism, outwins the day, so to speak. Now, I think both these guys got an uphill battle. I think Daniel Jones has an uphill battle, and I think Kyler does because of the size, but I'd rather have Kyler.
I think you make a great point, too, looking at the progression. Even if we just started evaluating them from week number 1 when Kyler started and Daniels when his first start, his first start, week number 3. The offense in Arizona has changed. They weren't utilizing a tight end, any type of heavy formation. They were very college-like the first few games. As you can see, the next few games, they've changed a little bit. It's starting to look more like an NFL team. Let's bring a little tight end in here. Let's be very more familiar so we can protect the quarterback. So him doing different things, I don't think that was the best offense for him the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. Now he's doing some different things and still getting better. So his arc is not going down. It's continuing to go up.
Yeah, how much of this progression will come along with the fact that he's with a first-year head coach and Cliff Kingsbury and him figuring out the league and what he wants to do against different opponents and defenses along with Kyler trying to figure everything?
Yeah, they're both learning along the way. They do have a great relationship. I did speak to Larry Fitzgerald. I speak to him about every other week, and an update on Kyler and on Arizona and what they're doing. They did a great thing for Kyler because initially they named him the starter. There was no competition. So when he comes into the building, even though he might have the coach with the least experience, he's more comfortable because the organization, the keys have already been handed over to him. Danny Dimes, do we know if he's the franchise quarterback with the Giants? They haven't told him that. Yeah, they drafted him. Haskins, all these other guys are trying to be the franchise quarterback. Kyler, the owner, the coach, the general manager, the star player, and Larry Fitzgerald, all of them had already anointed Kyler that.
And Kyler, and it's inflated because of the offense they're running, because they are so pass heavy, but he's now played 6 games. If he plays the full 16-game season at this pace, he's going to have a 5,000-yard season. 4,400 passing is what he's on pace for, 600 rushing. There's only 10 quarterbacks ever that have had a 5,000-yard season. In fact, no, I think there's only been 10 quarterback seasons, fewer than 10 quarterbacks, because Brees done it a few times, Stafford done it a few times. So his raw counting numbers are off the charts. His efficiency numbers need to improve. But he has, over that same 4-week stretch that I mentioned, Daniel Jones' quarterback rating has gone down each week. Kyler's gone 74 to 78 to 87 to 128. He's coming off the best game of his career. Daniel Jones coming off the worst game, both of their very young careers. I think Kyler was the better player coming in. I still feel that.
To the news of the night. Pat Mahomes reportedly suffering a dislocated kneecap in last night's Chiefs win. According to our guys at Fox Bet, KC is still the second biggest favorite to win the AFC after the Pats, followed by the Texans and the Ravens. So, Nick, how much does Pat Mahomes' injury potentially change the landscape of the AFC?
It's massive. Going into the year, I predicted New England would have the best record in the AFC and that the Chiefs would make the Super Bowl. Because I do think the Chiefs at full strength are going into the year, especially when I thought their defense was going to be better than it's been prior to last night, had shown they can go toe-to-toe with New England and beat them. I don't think anyone else in the AFC can. Who are the contenders? Like, who are the teams? If Patrick Mahomes comes back, then I still think they have a chance, but they would have to be beating New England when New England's coming off a bye, when the Chiefs are having to play in the wild card round almost assuredly, a far more difficult path, and it's guaranteed that game would be in New England. Do I trust a Bill O'Brien coach team against a Bill Belichick coach team in Houston? Absolutely not. We've talked about the Ravens today. Do I trust Baltimore's team as a whole to be able to present New England with something they're not prepared for, even though Baltimore teams historically have been able to go to New England and win? I don't. Indy? I like Indy's team, and I really like Jacoby Brissett. But no, now this morning I was thinking about Andrew Luck. I was thinking about those Colts and their fans saying, man, even though Jacoby's been good, what would this season have been looking like if our quarterback wasn't lost for the season due to injury, but lost for his career due to retirement? So the Patriots this morning woke up feeling great. They were, I don't care what they would say, they knew the Chiefs were going to present them a unique set of problems. Not ones they couldn't necessarily overcome, but a unique set of problems. That now is up in the air. So yeah, it drastically changes it. The Patriots should be the overwhelming favorites today as we await the news on Patrick Mahomes.
One thing year after year that we typically miss in covering the league is we get so caught up into which teams are going to be in the playoffs compared to which teams are going to be good after Halloween. Because it's really hard to evaluate the teams. The last couple of years, because of collective bargaining agreement, we give the NFL the first 4 games because of lack of practices, lack of padded practices, lack of continuity, lack of offensive linemen being developed. It's going to take you 4 games. So New England, the last couple of years, they have not been a good team in September or early October. So I'm not going to be consumed with, okay, who's good right now? Last year, Houston wasn't good, they got good. Colts weren't good, they got good. Baltimore wasn't good, they got good. Cleveland wasn't good, they got good. So right now, yes, New England is a huge favorite, but that's the only team that we're guaranteeing is going to get better. The rest of these teams are scrambling, and if Kansas City, if they can't play a couple games at home, to me, I didn't have any confidence them going against New England because of that defense and because New England has the confidence of going to Kansas City last year and smacking them in that AFC Championship game. So to me, Patty Mahomes being out for an extended period of time, it brings other people into the conversation of who can play at New England in the AFC Championship after New England rips off 14 wins at a minimum.
We're still awaiting the results of this MRI to find out the timeline and severity, but how long do you think Kansas City can survive without?
Well, a lot of that has to, listen, I think the Chargers have played themselves out of contention the last few weeks with just inexplicable and indefensible losses at home to the third-string quarterback for Pittsburgh, Devlin Hodges. So the Chargers, I can cross them off. Denver crossed themselves off yesterday. So a lot of that has to do with how good is Oakland. Is all of a sudden the AFC West going to be like the NFC East this year, where 9 wins maybe can get it done? If that's the case, then they could go 1-3, maybe even 0-4 without Patrick Mahomes. Let me give one devil's advocate argument. See if it registers with you at all, Chris Carter. You believed, even if Patrick Mahomes was healthy all year long, that the Chiefs, without a running game, without a competent defense, that if this hadn't happened yesterday, you would still be saying, man, you can't beat New England the way they're trying to play, especially going to New England.
Yes.
If there is any, and maybe I'm reaching, bright side to what happened yesterday, over the next month of football, they're going to have to learn to play a different style. They're going to have to lean on the running back more, lean on their defense more. If Mahomes does come back in a month and they have stolen a few things of, we actually can do this, we can do that, and then you add Mahomes to it, does that do anything?
Yeah, hypothetically, it's great. I'm sitting here listening to you, but I don't believe you. And the reason why, Andy Reid has been consistent. We had Brian Westbrook sit right here and yell at him. It's one of it. Andy Reid says one of his favorite players. He said, I'm yelling to Andy, hand me the ball. I'm like your son. And he said, nope, we going by air, bruh. We not going by stagecoach. So it's nice to talk about that. New Orleans is doing that. Sean Payton has developed that over the last couple of years. Andy Reid is not that type of coach. That's one of the reasons. But ultimately, the other reason is when I develop the fastest football team in the NFL, You can't tell them all of a sudden, we're a 4x1 relay team. We the fastest in the world. Now all of a sudden, Sarah, you know what we're getting ready to run? We're getting ready to run a 400. And anybody know anything about sprinting knows that sprinters don't want to run a 400. That's the toughest race. So, no, they're good at sprinting, and that can't be converted into anything else. So, hate to rain on your parade, but
20 straight years.
let me give you another tissue.
New England again.
Let me give you another
I like
tissue,
your thinking.
homie.
Dallas has lost 3 straight, but Dak Prescott is confident in his squad. The quarterback said yesterday, I know we have a great team. So, Canty, does a loss essentially end the season for Dallas?
I'm not going to say it ends the season, but it'd be getting late early if the Dallas Cowboys don't win this game. So, I mean, I look at it, and when you start talking about the primary competition in your division, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. And so you'd like to be able to assert your will on them and then be able to take a stranglehold on this division. Because when you look at the NFC, there's a lot of teams that are right there. 6 teams in the NFC that are 4-2 or better. So, I mean, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, the best chance for you to get in the tournament is to be able to win your division. If that doesn't happen because you can't get past that hurdle that is the Philadelphia Eagles this year, then that would be a disappointment. And with Jason Garrett in a year that he's got to show and prove that he deserves to be the head coach of this team moving forward, it's a tough spot to be in.
I think it's the only chance they have of getting into the tournament is winning the division. The NFC is going to be a 1 playoff team division this year. One playoff team division this year. When you look at, so is the season over if they lose this game, to answer your question? You can't say it's over because Philadelphia's been as hot and cold as they've been. Philadelphia doesn't look like they're poised to run away with it. But they are over as contenders. They are over as having the type of season I think they would need to have for Jason Garrett to be the coach next year. Right now, we sit here on, October 18th? How many teams in the NFC do we think are better than the Cowboys? I would argue the entire NFC North is better than the Dallas Cowboys. Some people would take issue with Detroit. Man, Detroit's played well and has a couple brutal losses. They had the Chiefs on the ropes, 4th and 8. Mahomes runs for it. They had Green Bay, I would argue, beaten. The refs insert themselves a bit, and they have a 2-score fourth quarter lead against Green Bay. Yeah. So the whole NFC North, there's Chicago, Minnesota, Green Bay, obviously. New Orleans and Carolina, to me, are obviously better than the Dallas Cowboys, and Carolina and New Orleans are doing it with backup quarterbacks. San Francisco and Seattle, there is no question right now they're better than the Dallas Cowboys. Yep. That's 8 teams. And then some people would say, what about the Rams? There are other teams people might throw in there. And what about the Eagles? And we'll see this weekend. So no, their season won't be over because you can still get in with the division championship. But their ability to build on what they did last year, which is what this whole year's been about, make a conference championship game for the first time in a quarter century, I think that would be over if it's not already with a loss.
Yeah, I don't think that is the right step process, Nick. Just because Dak in year 3, Zeke in year 3, we can't just automatically think every team is going to make that next step. Kansas City. So now Kansas City can't have a successful season unless they what? Make the Super Bowl? What about New Orleans? They can't have a successful season unless they make the Super Bowl. It's the Rams. So I don't believe in that. Oh, okay, well, this step and then maybe the next step. Look at the Browns the season that they're in. Because Dallas could actually be a better team this year than they were last year. Now, the numbers won't indicate it, but their start was very similar to last year. Can they survive the start? And that's what happened. That's what they were able to do last year. So for us thinking about the end game as far as, they don't make that next step, first you have to put a team together. Then you have to see how that team functions. You have to try to add new things to that. Dallas has not been able to be consistent as far as their deep passing game. First 3 games, they were great. Last 3 games, they've suffered at it. But ultimately, the reason why you don't want to lose this game, Sarah, is because you're not only fighting against opposition. Well, what about New Orleans? Well, what about Seattle? You're fighting against history. History says you lose 4 games, 6% of those teams win the playoffs, Nick. So you're fighting against more than just the opposition.
The stat Cris referencing, any team at any point that suffers a 4-game losing streak, only 6% of them end up making the postseason that year. Usually because you have a 4-game losing streak, you're not any good. And the concern with Dallas is, Canty, what is rock bottom for him? You play New Orleans, you're 3-0, you're feeling great, you get lucky, you don't have Drew Brees against you. It would have taken 13 points to win. and you lose. All right, so, okay, that's a bummer. You can deal with it. The next week, you play Green Bay. You're down 31-3. Wait, what? Then you play the Jets. You're down, 21-6 in that football game? Like, you know what's lower than that? Losing your home game against Philadelphia when they just got pasted by the Vikings. That would be the new, each week they're digging themselves a little bit deeper. That's the concern for them this weekend.
Well, this is an opportunity for them to get off the mat because you recognize, listen, if we win this game, we're in first place in our division. Yep. We still have everything that we want to accomplish out there in front of us. But the only problem with that is the Philadelphia Eagles are saying the exact same thing. And so when you recognize how much competition is in the conference, in the NFC, you look at some of the starts that those other teams have gotten out to and talked about 6 teams being 4-2 or better. Well, teams that start 4-2, they have a 63% chance of making the tournament. So chances are there's going to be a good football team that's left out of the playoff picture when you talk about the NFC. That's what makes this game paramount for the Dallas Cowboys. They absolutely have to win the division. I'm agreeing with Nick. I don't necessarily see a path to the playoffs for this team if they don't.
Well, Eagles secondary, though, has been a little bit banged up. They are getting healthier, though. Ezekiel Elliott has, through his career, performed well against the Eagles. Does this present an opportunity, though, for Dallas to have a bounce-back game?
If you had a healthy Amari Cooper, I would say it does, but you don't. And you saw some critical drops from their other receivers last week. You saw some drops from Jason Witten, who's usually shorthanded. You saw some drops from Michael Gallup. I mean, when your offense is struggling, when your quarterback is struggling, your receivers have to come through for you and you have to make plays. CC talked about this Dallas Cowboys team bouncing back from a 3-5 start last year. Well, a big part of that was the Cowboys deciding to trade for Amari Cooper and introducing him into that passing game, opened that entire offense up. That's not going to happen this year. Now, hopefully you get Cooper back sooner than later, but people have tape of Amari Cooper and Jason Garrett and Kellen Moore's offense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this Dallas Cowboys team moving forward. And again, I come back to, I don't know how much this team trusts their head coach, and that's a problem when you start seeing that dynamic play out on the football field.
One thing Dallas has in their favor, the one guy who can take over this game for both teams, going to be 47 guys dressed on both sides. Ezekiel Elliott is the best football player. Now, the quarterback can have more of an impact on the game, but Zeke can take over the game. If those tackles, with them practicing this week, if they're back into the lineup, and Zeke gets that 160 he typically gets against the Eagles, so let's just watch for that. Let's watch for the best pure football player if he takes over the game.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.